to succeed. But the day before the signing ceremony, enough Republicans joined with Democrats to pass this resolution. And that's a major rebuke for the president, who at that very moment, his administration is negotiating with Iran on a ceasefire and a deal that would end the war. And so the president is furious because he feels like Congress is essentially tying one hand behind his back as he's trying to come up with a way to end this conflict and move forward.
Right.
So the Iran war vote is Tuesday, and the next morning is the signing ceremony for the housing bill. And I roll up to the Hill and I walk past the stage being built. And as I'm walking through the Capitol, Senator John Thune, who's the Republican leader of the Senate,
Majority Leader.
President, I ask unanimous consent.
He is on the floor giving his morning floor speech.
The Senate being a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak.
And Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team.
Well, good morning, everybody.
They're standing at a press conference talking about this bill and what it's going to do for the American people.
A really important bill to lower housing costs. We delivered for American families.
And everyone is gearing up for a big day. It's always a big day when the president comes to the Capitol.
Right.
Suddenly, out of nowhere, hours before the signing ceremony is supposed to take place, the president goes on his social media platform, Truth Social, and says that he will not sign the housing bill.
Wow.
He kills the ceremony. And as senators are speaking, as members of the House Republican Conference are speaking,
I'll take a few questions.
Speaker Johnson, in the process of this press conference, President Trump announced that he is canceling the bill signing for the housing bill that you all were just talking about. He said
they don't seem to be aware that the president has just killed what was going to be their big achievement of the day.
What's your reaction?
Yeah, my reaction is,
Oh, jeez.
the president, when we go through the details of the bill, he's going to understand that it's a good product.
At one point, a member of Congress walks up to the signing ceremony, looks around, doesn't seem to know where anyone is, and reporters have to tell her that the signing ceremony is not happening. And she leaves, and a bunch of reporters are still standing there, watching as this stage, which was supposed to be the platform for this major legislative achievement, this huge bipartisan breakthrough, is empty, and workers start taking it apart piece by piece. And we're all left reeling, trying to figure out what's going on and what's going to happen next.
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by Condor Airlines, offering nonstop service to Frankfurt, Germany from 8 U.S. gateways, with connections to European destinations like Venice, Barcelona, Budapest, and more. Learn more at condor.com. Condor Airlines, welcome aboard.
Listeners of The Daily, get to the heart of the stories shaping the world. For more on today's episode, go to nytimes.com/thedaily. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
Support for Radio IQ is provided by the Virginia Education Association, the Commonwealth's Union of Public Education Professionals, a union of educators building better public schools for a better future. Online at veanea.org.
The Iran war hasn't ended yet, as much as the president would like it to, but the United States of America's ongoing fight in Somalia has no end in sight, and the president is ramping up airstrikes, which means civilians are dying. But the president never really talks about our fight in Somalia, so we are going to on the next Today Explained.
Today Explained, weekdays beginning at 7 on Radio IQ.
I'm Bruce C. Bryan, host of Naturally Curious. Each week, we'll meet fascinating people and hear how they got to where they are with stories that will inspire and will transport you. So tune in Sundays at 7 p.m. here on Radio IQ. I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. My colleague, Michael Gold, on the strange saga of a landmark housing bill. Michael, what's your understanding of why the president canceled this much anticipated signing ceremony and says he is not going to sign the bill? Is this him basically just being sore over the War Powers resolution?
Well, the War Powers resolution certainly doesn't help. But when the president announces in his social media post that he's canceling the signing ceremony for the housing bill, he points to something else. He points to the Save America Act. The Save America Act is the president's long-sought election bill that comes out of his years of fixation on voter fraud and his debunked claims of voter fraud in American elections. This bill would impose a national requirement that voters show identification at the polls. It would require that they provide proof of citizenship when they register to vote. And it would severely restrict voting by mail, which is something that many Republican senators oppose and is a major reason why Republicans have repeatedly told the president that they don't have the votes to pass this bill. And so the bill is stalled in the Senate, but it seems like President Trump has realized that now he has some leverage. He has this housing bill that everyone wants to become a law. He has a signing ceremony that everyone wants to happen. And so when he makes his social media post canceling the signing ceremony, he says he will not sign the housing bill until Congress passes the Save America Act, which he says he considers to be a national emergency.
I mean, why does the president insist on linking these two bills given the political impracticality of the election bill ever passing? Is it actually the president imagining that this hostage holding will work to get Save America passed, or is something else going on?
I think there is a part of the president that thinks that if he puts enough pressure, the Senate will find a way to do his bidding. But I think the bigger issue here is that over the past few months, a lot of senators have become more independently minded, and they've started to push back against things that the president wants that they don't think meets their political interests. And that's where the Iran war powers vote that we talked about starts to come into the mix. Because that was a very high-profile display of Republicans rejecting the president's foreign policy initiative. And there have been a few other cases in the last few months where Republicans have said that they can't just blindly go along with the president's wishes and that they're going to push back against him. I think Save America for President Trump represents the greatest pushback because in his view, and he's said this before, the only way for Republicans to win in the midterms is if they pass this law. But Republicans in Congress are trying to focus on affordability. They want to talk about issues. They want to highlight these things that they can deliver for the American people. And that's where these paths kind of diverge.
Right. So in a sense, Trump is punishing Republicans in Congress for not seeing the situation as he sees it, for diverging from his view of the best way to win the midterms, which is strategic, which is restricting voting in a way that could advantage Republicans. But what that suggests, and I'm curious if you agree with this proposition, Michael, is that Trump is saying to Republicans, what really matters in these midterms is not policy achievements. It's not getting a big housing bill passed that would show Americans that the Republican Party cares about cost of living. Instead, what the party should prioritize, according to the president, are restrictions on voting that could help the party win. He's saying focus on working the election system, not on appealing to the hearts and minds of the voters.
I think that's a good way to frame it. You know, I covered the Trump campaign in 2024, and there was a sense in which he was always much happier to be talking about these elections issues than talking about the economy, talking about affordability, talking about all these things that we now see are of top concern to voters. And we've actually seen that again in the past few days.
What are your plans for the housing bill, Mr. President?
Where when he's asked about this housing bill, which members of his party are calling a major victory.
I don't know. I think it's so unimportant by compared to the Save America Act. I think
he's dismissing it, saying it's of minor importance, suggesting that it won't actually fix the problem.
It's a yawn. Some people say it's wonderful. To me, compared to the Save America Act, just about everything is a big yawn.
And so there's a way in which he seems to be leaving Republicans in Congress almost twisting in the wind when it comes to policy issues ahead of the midterm elections in November.
Well, yeah, just explain me. Well, what happens to a bill of this scale that's been passed by both chambers, but that the president doesn't love and says he won't sign?
The president could surprise everybody and sign this bill, whether quietly or with a quick signing ceremony at the White House. Right now, that doesn't seem very likely, but with Trump, many things can change.
Right.
But regardless of what President Trump does, under the Constitution, once the president gets a bill from Congress, a 10-day clock starts to tick. And if he does nothing when Congress is in session, the bill becomes a law anyway. And the timeline for that 10-day clock is the end of this week. But there's no signing ceremony. There's no big moment for the cameras. There's no footage to go on cable news and across social media. The bill gets sent back to Congress and it becomes a law.
Just kind of limps into law on that 10th day.
Yeah, that's the idea. The other thing that the president could do is veto the bill, send it back to Congress, and dare Republicans who have been very hesitant to do anything to anger him too much to override his veto.
Which would definitely be the first time that a presidential veto was overridden in this term.
Yeah, and I think it would actually be a tough decision for a lot of Republicans, even though they supported this bill. Because if we've been watching anything during this midterm cycle, it's that the president remembers people who have crossed them. And even though these guys really want this housing bill, I think they'd have to make a serious decision about whether to anger the president by rejecting his veto.
Well, let's assume for a moment that the likeliest path is that perhaps the president simply does nothing and this becomes law without ceremony. And what would that outcome mean for this bill and for the president's relationship with the Republican leadership in Congress?
Well, look, if this bill becomes a law, regardless of how it happens, this is still a major legislative victory. It's been more than 30 years since Congress has passed major housing legislation. It would still be a major bipartisan victory. And experts say that this might not fix the housing crisis right away, but it would go a long way toward starting to address a problem that affects millions of Americans.
Right.
On the political end, I think that's a bit tricky. You know, we've seen in the last several months this rift open between the president and Republicans in the Senate especially. And they've been willing to buck his priorities. You know, we talked about the Iran war vote, but they also essentially made him kill this Justice Department fund that was supposed to go to the victims of so-called weaponization. They've started making noise about not thinking a lot of his nominees are fitting candidates for office.
Like the Director of National Intelligence.
Like the Director of National Intelligence, and to some extent, Todd Blanche, who Trump nominated as Attorney General. And you're starting to see that these senators, who up until this point had really not shown much of an independent streak, are starting to get a bit louder about their concerns that their priorities and the president's are diverging. We're in the middle of a midterm election cycle, and Republicans want to display unity. They want to say the president, the House, and the Senate, we're all on the same page, and we're all fighting for the American people. And that signing ceremony was supposed to be a big way for them to demonstrate that they were doing that. But I don't think Republicans are going to look kindly on the president taking away what would have been a major photo opportunity and a major media moment for them. We always talk about how the president doesn't forget slights that members of Congress commit against him. But I don't think that members of Congress would forget this slight against them.
Oh, Michael, thank you very much.
Always great talking to you, Michael.
The Daily is supported by Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort, offering a small ship experience with a shore excursion included in every port and onboard cultural enrichment. Discover more at Viking.com.
For everything you need to know about the most important stories of the day, you're listening to The Daily from The New York Times, distributed by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that inform and inspire, entertain, and engage audiences everywhere.
The Daily is powered by the journalism of The New York Times and is distributed by APM, American Public Media. You can go deeper into the stories you hear on The Daily at nytimes.com/The Daily. That's it for The Daily. I'm Michael Lombardo. See you tomorrow.
Do you have an old or unused vehicle you no longer need? Do you want to support public radio? Then donate it to support this station. You can give an unwanted car, truck, motorcycle, ATV, or even your boat. It's quick, easy, tax deductible, and we'll even pick it up from you. Go to radioiq.org, click the support tab, and drive all the way down to the vehicle donation link. Thanks.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City, Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISC FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech. on your smart speaker, and online at radioiq.org.
The president's half rally, half national address on the 4th of July was evacuated, delayed, but eventually delivered just before the clock struck 5th of July. He talked about communism so much it felt like 1954 out there on the National Mall.
Good evening and welcome to our City Council recessed session for Monday, July 6th, 7 o'clock p.m. Council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video streamed through YouTube Live at youtube.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. This time I'll ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Ms. Powers. Here. Mr. Hagan.
Here.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Here. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Mayor Cobb.
Here, and we are all present. I will lead us in the invocation and then following that in the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to stand. Loving Spirit, be with us tonight. Guide us as we seek to listen, as we share collective wisdom and discovery and understanding, and as we seek to make the best decisions that will shape the best for our city. We pray all of this in your holy name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you all for coming tonight. The purpose of our meeting tonight is to continue the public hearing from May 18th, 2026, which was automatically adjourned pursuant to Section 2-15 Rules of Procedure, Code of the City of Roanoke as amended. Only those individuals who did not speak at the May 18th meeting will be permitted to speak tonight, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. And the last thing I'll say before introducing the public hearing is that because this is a continuance of the public hearing on May 18th, we will not be hearing citizens after this public hearing. So tonight's meeting is solely for the purpose of this public hearing, okay? So our main item tonight is the continuation of the public hearing, and it's a request of the City of Roanoke to propose amendments to Chapter 36.2 zoning of the Code of the City of Roanoke as amended, intended to facilitate context-sensitive housing development, to promote community health and wellness, to encourage purposeful land use, to make changes to the use tables for multiple purpose, industrial, and planned unit development districts, and to make changes to clarify and correct elements of the zoning code. Such amendments being for the public purposes of promoting public health, public safety, and good zoning practice. We have one measure, an ordinance, and I need a motion and second, please.
Motion.
Second? Second. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Nash and Vice Mayor McGuire. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance ordaining, amending, and adopting Section 36.2-205 dimensional regulations, Section 36.2-312 dimensional regulations for residential districts, Section 36.2-315 use table for multiple purpose districts, Section 36.2-322 use table for industrial districts, Section 36.2-30-327 use table for planned unit development district, Section 36.2-403 accessory uses and structures, Section 36.2-405 bed and breakfast homestay and short-term rental establishments. Section 36.2-407.3, data center. Section 36.2-409.1, dwellings. Section 36.2-426.1, retail sales and vape and tobacco establishments. Section 36.2-429, temporary uses. Section 36.2-540, zoning amendments. Section 36.2-625, outdoor lighting standards. Section 36.2-644, overall tree canopy requirements. Section 36.2-646, facade planning. Appendix A, definitions. Appendix B, submittal requirements of Chapter 36.2, zoning of the Code of the City of Roanoke, as amended, for the purposes of ordaining, amending, and adopting the following code sections to update, clarify, and make the city's zoning ordinance easier to use for its citizens and consistent with state law, and the city's comprehensive plan, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 7-0, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed zoning amendments, with one amendment added during their hearing regarding parking off of the alley. So that's just a note for our consideration tonight. We're pleased to recognize and welcome Ms. Catherine Gray. I know you gave us a very thorough overview. We don't expect you to go over that again tonight since this is a continuation. But if there are any remarks you would like to make to start us off before we open the public hearing, I'll welcome you to do that.
Good evening, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council, City Manager Turner. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again about the zoning text amendments. This all goes back to our comprehensive plan and our work with the community for what we want our community to be over the next 20 years. The comprehensive plan, City Plan 2040, is something that we spent 3 years interacting with our citizens, getting their perspectives and their thoughts on what our priorities should be, creating policies from those priorities, and then actions to carry out those policies. You have seen 3 different zoning amendments that have occurred since City Plan 2040 was adopted. All of those amendments are working to move us into compliance with City Plan 2040. Some of the main things that we talked about in City Plan 2040 are neighborhoods and the importance of neighborhoods as building blocks for our community. How we need to have different forms of housing in each area of our neighborhood to have complete neighborhoods, neighborhood centers, things like that. So all of the things that you'll hear us talking about tonight when we talk about housing are part of that. They are found in the comprehensive plan under interwoven equity, under our healthy communities, under our livable built environment, and under our economy section, under our land use section, and under our urban design section, what form things should take. So we bring these text amendments to you with Planning Commission's recommendation 7-0 for approval. And staff is available and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And thank you for being here tonight. All right, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to ask our clerk to call 2 by 2 those citizens who've signed up to speak tonight. When you come to the podium, the mic is already on. You'll see a box in the upper right-hand corner. Green means start, Yellow means you have a minute remaining, and red means wrap it up. And if you're mid-sentence, that's great. I'll work with you to wrap it up. So, Ms. McCoy, would you call our first two speakers, please?
First two speakers, and these were speakers from May 18th that did not get to speak.
Okay.
This will be Dwayne Howard, Tobias Stewart are those first two speakers.
Don't see Mr. Howard, so Mr. Stewart? Yeah, come on up. Welcome. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for hearing me. I just want to express my support for denser housing in our communities. It's better sustainably, economically, environmentally, better health outcomes for people living in communities with denser housing, lower traffic for the whole city, and better economic development for those neighborhoods. So I'm a big fan of denser neighborhoods, and I would like to keep the ability to build ADUs in places like Old Southwest. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chris Corella and Ben Vorshore.
Chris Corella? Don't see, what was the second name?
Berschoor.
Okay, I see him coming.
All right, I'm sorry for the pronunciation.
Would you be so kind as to share your name with us?
Ben Vorshore.
Thank you, Ben. Welcome.
You can, if it's hard to remember, you can just think of it as I've been jamming for sure.
That's great. Thanks for the clue. Welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a co-founder of the Southwestern Virginia Data Center Transparency Alliance, and I'm speaking in regards to the amendments to the zoning ordinance that are up for a vote tonight. And I'm here to voice my support for those amendments. There's a lot of localities around the area who are deficient in that respect. In some areas do not have any kind of zoning ordinance, and so anything can go through. Others just don't get to the issue until it's already at their doorstep. Others will pass an amendment for expediency in order to push through a project that they don't want to tell their constituents about. And so I think that the steps that are being taken in these amendments are very important first steps. Few of our members, a couple months ago, you had heard about this earlier today in comments, that a few of our members met with people on the Planning Commission and just discussed ideas for being able to take the zoning amendments that much further. And so while I do, as I said, support these amendments that are up for a vote tonight, just so that something can be put in place, I do encourage you and the Planning Commission to consider the amendments that we have proposed, just to be able to lock the issue down. And the amendments that we put forward aren't to undo any of the hard work that was done, but to basically fill in some of the gaps. And that mainly has to do with public notification, with having public hearings, making a lot of the impact studies available before a project is approved, so that the community can know what is being proposed, what is like the possible future pros and cons that we may be looking at, so that if there is a case to be made for a data center, then it can be made before a decision is actually made, and not trying to backfill an explanation after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cody Jones, Derek Cackness.
Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Thank you for having me, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, and City Manager. Appreciate you guys. So my name is Cody Jones. I'm speaking tonight as the founder of Ironwood Policy and Risk, and I was tasked by John McKay, who's also here tonight, from Integrity Enterprises Group, with preparing a zoning reform report for city officials. If you guys had the time to read that, which was sent kind of just on Friday, I hope you did. I appreciate that. And that report is the basis for my comments tonight. Another project that we worked on with Integrity Enterprises is the Huntington House effort. It's just kind of how we got together and led to this point, which brought us to a broader conversation about housing, preservation, and responsible development in Roanoke. So I want to be clear at the beginning, I'm not a resident of Roanoke City, but that does not mean I do not care deeply about Roanoke City, its residents, and its future. Roanoke has helped shape much of my life. My father retired from Roanoke City Police Department. Many of my friends and mentors still serve the city, and I also served as a police officer for Roanoke City. I know this city and its decisions are not limited to the city limits. Roanoke is the economic heartbeat of the surrounding region. What happens here affects families, workers, businesses, neighborhoods, and communities well beyond its borders. So my role in this process has been to help provide independent policy analysis. So through Ironwood Policy and Risk, at the request of IEG, I reviewed the zoning proposals, compared Roanoke's challenges with similar communities, and asked the principal question: how do we expand housing opportunity without weakening neighborhood stability, eroding public trust, or losing the local character that makes Roanoke worth investing in? So the report concludes that zoning reform is absolutely necessary. Roanoke has an aging housing stock, limited available land, affordability pressures, vacant housing, and real demand for more obtainable housing options. But zoning reform itself is not a standalone solution. Zoning can make new housing legally possible, but implementation determines whether that housing is practical, responsible, and supported by the community. That is why I believe tonight's conversation should not be reduced to a simple argument for density or against density. The better question is whether the city has the right safeguards, procedures, reporting, infrastructure, planning, parking considerations, and neighborhood review process to make the reform work. The compromise before City Council deserves serious consideration because it recognizes the need for more housing while also acknowledging that neighborhoods deserve a meaningful voice, especially when larger developments are proposed. I also believe the city should continue looking at ways to support owner-occupied housing, rehabilitation of existing homes, smaller local builders, adaptive reuse, and clear reporting policies so citizens can see whether these reforms are actually producing the outcomes as promised. Roanoke does need more housing, but it also needs trust, a process that citizens can understand, and reform that invites participation. I respectfully ask City Council to treat tonight as not the end of this conversation, but as the beginning of a stronger implementation process where citizen input, neighborhood stability, and measurable outcomes are prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Derek Cackness.
I don't see Mr. Cackness.
Next two speakers, John McKay, Daniel Koropecki Cox.
Welcome, Mr. McKay.
Good evening. My name is John McKay. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor Cobb and Vice Mayor McGuire. I'm a retired school educator. My family has lived in Northeast since 1966. And tonight I represent a group of neighbors in Northeast Roanoke who came together to help save the Huntington Mansion. This sparked an interest in helping the city create attainable housing while preserving our history. Through that effort, we commissioned an independent housing reform through Cody for Roanoke, and it has been shared with the city officials and is available to all citizens. We ourselves are a new group made up of retirees and young people. So Roanoke faces a real housing challenge, limited land and aging housing stock. Homeownership is at a decline presently. Roanoke is at a scary 50% rental and homeowner level. Also, we have far too many vacant boarding homes. Now, Cody's addressed most of the issues, so my only concern is in direct relation to the amendment is for me and my neighbors having a voice in the most important part of the amendment. It allows public notice in Board of Zoning Appeals hearings for apartment development larger than 14 units in RM2 districts. While I'm disappointed that opportunities for citizen input on other zoning categories have been reduced, I recognize that tonight's compromise is a step in the right direction, but I hope it doesn't end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Cotopaxi-Cox, Mayor Bauer, distinguished council members, fellow Roanokeers. Thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. Sometimes housing policy is complicated, but this is not one of those times. Housing prices are a function of supply and demand, and demand is growing in Roanoke. I'm actually a part of the problem. I moved here a year ago to start medical school at Virginia Tech Carilion, and that was along with 55 classmates. This fall, in a couple weeks, it'll be 64, and VTC is moving towards 100 people per class. That's not the only group of people looking to join Roanoke's ranks. Roanoke is an up-and-coming hub for arts, music, biotech, medicine, and outdoor recreation, and seeks to attract young professionals, families, and more while maintaining its small-town charm, green spaces, and most importantly, its accessibility. While demand increases, supply is struggling to keep up, and pre-2024 housing policy encourages building out, not up, increasing sprawl and encroaching on Roanoke's green spaces. Rewinding the clock now on Roanoke's housing policy would also keep Roanoke car-centric, slowing down the expansion of public transit and cycling in the Star City. Just about every speaker on this issue has said that they're all for affordable housing. If you are serious about affordable housing, Mr. Mayor and distinguished council members, I urge you to reject the amendments to the 2024 housing reforms. I also want to echo the calls of some of the other speakers on this issue to separate out these amendments and vote on them independently. There are some of these amendments that I would wholeheartedly support, but everything on affordable housing, trying to rewind the clock, I want to urge you to reject. Those amendments prioritize cars and the interests of wealthy Roanoke homeowners over the interests of low-income renters. Furthermore, treating this issue as a political punching bag leaves efforts to build housing stock on hold. It's time to move on. Let's reject the proposed amendments and give Roanoke the time and stability to build new housing units. Let Roanoke builders expand housing supply to meet the rising demand and keep prices reasonable for middle-class and low-income Roanokers. Let's keep Roanoke green, tight-knit, and affordable for the next generation. Thank you.
David Hoops and Allison Blanton.
Welcome, Mr. Hoops.
Welcome. Thank you, Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, other members of Council. I'm here tonight to speak out so that you vote against these amendments, not because I am against everything in them, but as a whole package. There are some things that just I do not agree on. My points on this matter are the 2024 zoning amendments are fine. We have some issues that may form, but we have not given them a chance to form. We immediately went to reverting back to what we had before the 2024 amendments. One of the things is these requirements require the most expensive form of transportation and no other form of transportation. There is no requirement for indoor bike storage. There is no requirement for bike racks. There is no requirement for bus stops. If we want to play a very quick mental game, I would like everybody to think of their budget for how much they spend on their vehicle in a year. I only own an e-bike. Last year I spent $500. If I was to only take the bus, I would spend $700. Please think about how long it took you to get there paying for your car. The average household income is $50,000. And we are asking them and telling them that the most expensive form of transportation is required to live in the city, which is not true. I live in the city without a vehicle. All of y'all have seen me out and about at a lot of functions, and I do not have a problem getting around the city. I have done a lot more with my budget than I would ever have done with a vehicle in the budget. I would also like to point out that in the past year with 2024 zoning, I have seen 3 duplexes built, and then last month there was 75 townhomes that were approved. all with a 2 to 2.4 average of parking spaces without a parking requirement. So parking is being built. It's not being built. And so I was also told by planning department that the rear setback change was due to vehicle space ability if somebody wanted. And before I run out of time, I would like to say that in 20 years, do we want our neighborhoods to look like downtown, half covered in parking lots? I, for one, know I do not want my neighborhoods to look like that. I would prefer them to be filled with people and houses, not spaces for cars and not spaces for people. I would prefer space for people, and voting no will help us achieve that. We can come back in the future days and work on specific issues, but this whole package just doesn't cut it for me. Thank you for your time. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Hoops. Welcome, Ms. Blanton.
Sorry. Okay, Flora. Okay. Okay, Flora, sit down. I'm Allison Blanton. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Roanoke Valley Preservation Foundation. I reiterate Bob Clement's comments in May, requesting that you all do not approve the zoning amendments and instead reduce the density. And we do definitely support affordable housing as well as missing middle housing. We also appreciate the city staff and the Comprehensive Plan 2040, the goals there and their efforts to reach those goals. We appreciate the changes, revisions they have made. However, we feel like they have not gone far enough. And I recommend or encourage you all to consider the Citizens Committee alternative amendments that they have proposed, because they have been working very closely with the city staff, but they also live in the neighborhoods that this will impact. As you all know, from the very beginning, the Preservation Foundation has been concerned about the high density that was being proposed. And those concerns became validated in 2025 when the houses on Crystal Spring were demolished. And we were going to list it as endangered, but it became a bulldozer award because during that process, those houses came down. And that will, irreversibly change the character of that neighborhood at its gateway. So basically, I want you all to really consider the Citizen Committee's proposed changes. But I also want to encourage the city to look at providing affordable housing through other means than zoning. Historic housing, which I'm not referring just to National Register historic districts, but any house that was built more than 50 years ago, it actually provides the vast majority throughout the nation of affordable housing. The trickle-down theory that a building, increasing the supply and letting that improve housing for the lowest income does not really prove true. And nationwide studies have been done to show this. Actually, historic housing is cheaper to renovate. There's been a study about low-income housing tax credits used across the nation, and the cost of new construction is $209,000 per unit compared to just $153,000 per unit for both acquiring and rehabbing units in existing buildings. Roanoke, as you all know, the vast majority of the houses in Roanoke are historic, and we have a lot of vacant houses. So zoning itself is not going to provide affordable housing. We've already seen that it provides new market rate housing. So be very, very careful and make sure that we consider the density, the impact on our historic neighborhoods, which are a very, very valuable asset to Roanoke as a city and to the citizens for the quality of life that it provides to everybody. And historic neighborhoods are shown to have a higher rate of minority occupancy and home ownership in those areas. So just explore rehabbing our existing building stock to help achieve affordable zoning, and do not pass the zoning amendments, but make them less dense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blanton.
Barbara Dirk. And Patel.
Welcome, Ms. Dirk.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, city administration. I am Barbara Dirk, and I had the privilege of attending the 250 celebration in Williamsburg this weekend, and I want you to know it was absolutely fantastic. People were there celebrating. Carly Fiona's goal was to unite Americans around shared ideals and push for a renewed commitment to our history and culture. Although partisan differences often become heated, she said, in the current political climate, she has seen firsthand that citizens will celebrate a shared occasion together. People will set aside the tension in the moment and become inspired by the stories of struggles of those that came before us. And this is where the zoning conversation comes into focus. The Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal to the right of liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it establishes the premise that citizens have a right to alter or abolish a tyrannical government and institute a new one that secures these rights. Well, I am a resident of Roanoke, and I am reluctant to give Roanoke City government employees permission to decide zoning issues without me being notified of zoning changes and without an opportunity for citizen input. I believe in personal property rights. I believe in the city of Roanoke having a one-stop shop to help developers to come in and get approval, and I know that there's backlog there. But I also believe that to allow by right without me being notified as a neighbor what's happening in my neighborhood is not what I would like. I want to be involved in the government. I don't want the government telling me what can be done. I want to be part of the process. I want to be part of the solution. Roanoke will not benefit from timeless ideas of government to and for the residents of Roanoke. I believe that the zoning is what we have in process with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission is important for the citizens to be notified of what's happening in their neighborhoods. I believe that we all are here together and that we need to celebrate us, USA, and celebrate you and me as part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dirk. Welcome, Mr. Patel.
Hi, thank you for having me, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, City Manager, and the rest of Council. So I'm a little nervous. I don't like giving public speeches. I usually reserve that for everyone else in my group. But I was told I need to do my civic duty today, so here I am. So my name's Om Patel. I'm here on behalf of Strong Towns Roanoke. Hopefully not missing too much of the World Cup game today. 30 minutes. But I'm here on behalf of Strong Towns Roanoke to advocate against the zoning changes that are trying to be made today. I strongly believe that the 2024 zoning reform wasn't perfect, but it was a good start. I think it needs to move further, but that's me. I believe that everyone has different opinions. But let me start going by the 2024 plan. So the 2040 plan calls for more housing options in the city. It says that we need to allow more options, allow for the affordability by having those options. It shouldn't just be small houses big apartment complexes or single family zoning, just single family homes. It should be allowing for the middle housing that we're critically missing. We have so few of it. We need to highlight that this zoning that is currently existing gives us such walkability benefits. We can make it so that we can have a more denser walkable area and kind of be more like Grandin. We all love Grandin, let's be honest. That's like my favorite place in Roanoke. But we also need to factor in the affordable housing aspect of it. We have a stressed housing supply, and I'm just thinking simple math here, or simple economics. Increased supply, lower demand, kind of it decreases the price, and it reduces the stress on those low-income houses that have higher income residents that can afford higher prices. And then let me touch on parking mandates. So I hope that we don't go back to before 2021 when we passed the parking mandate abolishing it. I don't think it's a good idea because of the fact it adds costs and reduces the affordability. It adds about $80 is what I heard. And I sent, I think, Mr. McGuire and Mr. Nash and Mr. Volson a letter from PRN, Parking Reform Network, showing the support for that. So please, please, please don't do that. And one study, because I know I haven't heard much about studies today. So one study I saw was a 2022 review of the annual review of sociology describes zoning and land reform use as key processes in shaping access to housing and housing cost. And the planning commission or planning department also says the same thing. And okay, I'll just stop there. Thank you guys. And please look at the email I sent you guys. Please respond.
Well, and Mr. Patel, you can tell Strongtown she did a great job. All right, thank you.
Kate Klinger and Katie Lee.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Kate. So I've been in Roanoke. I graduated college in 2018 and moved here for working as an architect. And I've been here for 7 years now. So I started out moving here to work in architecture, where I really fell in love with the historic architecture that's in Roanoke. And I think that's one of the drawing features in architecture throughout the Roanoke community. My concern with approving a denser community is that you're going to lose a lot of that historic nature that is inherent to the Roanoke community that is a huge draw for people, especially when we touch on the fact that, and while living here, I started at 23, I had no money, as you often do when you graduate college. I moved into a 1940s, hasn't been renovated since the 1980s apartment building. And that's where I've continued to live because it allowed me to actually have a savings account. Many of the new construction apartments that are going up since 2024 are outside of the range of many of young people's pricing for if they want to be able to save to afford a house in a place like Roanoke or afford to have a family. You have to stay in the lower price point. While more density will allow for a higher housing stock, it doesn't allow for people to actually have a savings. You're going to use all of your money to just live, to survive, which is not what we want in Roanoke. You want to have people want to stay here. You want them to build a family. It's all built around outdoor community, getting out on the greenway. I assume that all the other young people who have spoken today who talk about, well, if there's more density, we'll have more options, but those new options, I've worked on them. They are $2,000 for 2-bedroom apartments. You have to be making a level of salary that many people in Roanoke aren't making to afford that. And that's my concern with approving this zoning amendment. In addition, just touching on the preservation side of it, the sustainability of demolishing buildings and rebuilding an existing one, it takes somewhere between 30 and 60 years for you to actually see benefits from a sustainability standpoint, which can be highly detrimental to our current environment. Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you all again. I apologize for my absence over the past month and a half, and I look forward to re-engaging. And out of respect for the intention of this meeting stated at the beginning, I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Antoinette Highcheck. All right. And Jason Porter.
Welcome.
It's horrific. There's no vowels. It's fine. We left them in the old country. That works every time. Members of City Council and my fellow citizens, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Antoinette Horisic, and I am here to encourage City Council to vote against amending the 2024 zoning amendments, specifically the removal of parking minimums and the expansion of minimal lot sizes for certain zonings. I am an architectural historian and historic preservationist who has recently relocated to Roanoke, a city I chose because of its creative adaptive reuse of buildings, proximity to natural resources, and vibrancy I felt through various neighborhoods in the city. In fact, I did walk here tonight. I relocated from Southern California because of the lack of missing middle housing and stagnating civic development and a need to get back to my own Appalachian roots. I am concerned that rolling back aspects of the 2024 zoning amendments will shift development towards the direction of what I escaped. Miles and miles of sprawling, segregated, and unaffordable single-family zoned neighborhoods with no sense of community connection, with development tied up in endless reports of red tape, affordable only if you benefit from generational wealth, which I do not. The appeal of cities such as Roanoke lies in the fact that the urban fabric was designed at the human scale instead of for cars and a post-war fiction of a white picket fence and 2.5 children and perhaps a dog. Urban theorist Jane Jacobs writes that a well-used city street is apt to be a safe street, vibrant, mixed-use neighborhoods where neighbors know each other and watch out for each other. Grayfield lots, unused parking spaces, and endless single-family little boxes do not a well-used city street make. It is well documented by urban planners such as Donald Shoup that increasing suburban sprawl and car-focused design, including parking minimums, has created neighborhoods that are increasingly segregated by race and class. A city should strive to cultivate neighborhoods which feature multiple types of housing and development: duplexes, triplexes, apartment buildings scattered between single-family homes and walkable commercial thoroughfares. In fact, that is the historic reality of most of our cities. They are multi-family houses, cottage courts. These are things that have existed in cities since pre-World War II. That is the majority of our 250 years as a country, our historic stock. High-density neighborhoods are historic fact, not a recent aberration. The vast majority of desirable and dense multifamily housing is that small scale and fosters those well-used city streets. Cottage courts are a perfect example of that. Please consider the removal of parking minimums and the expansion of minimum lot sizes, removing that, for new development, and continue to embrace that flexible zoning, which, while considering existing neighborhood character, allows the city of Roanoke to continue to evolve and welcome new and old citizens of all backgrounds. Thank you.
Welcome. Hi there. My name is Jason Porter. I'm a Roanoke City resident, and I live in the Raleigh Court neighborhood near Grandin Village. I'm a native of the Roanoke Valley, and I've had family in this area for at least 8 generations. I'm proud of our city, as imperfect as it is, and I want the best possible outcomes for all of its people, whether rich or poor, black or white, and no matter where they come from or how new they are to our area. I'm here to express support for the existing zoning code as amended in 2024 and to express opposition to the current attempt to once again amend and overhaul the zoning code. I'm particularly in opposition to the use of the court system by a small number of people who have a bee in their bonnet about this topic to harass the city council and try to make their personal opinions carry more weight in public deliberation than those of their neighbors. I also understand that through their lawsuit, they've even forced some of you to meet with them personally to hear out their list of demands. That is not how our system is supposed to work. Not only that, several of the most prominent members of this opposition group are neighbors of mine in Greater Raleigh Court. This is a neighborhood that has always had mixed density greater than single-family housing, including many apartment buildings. And it's that very mixed density that gives the neighborhood much of its vibrance and interest and sense of inclusive community, because many different kinds of people live there and want to live there. It had that level of density when these people bought their homes, no matter how long they've been living there. So I have great difficulty with giving too much weight to arguments made by people who already live in a neighborhood with mixed density, but who file nuisance lawsuits on the city government because they don't want any new neighbors. They want their neighborhoods to be frozen and exclusionary to protect their property value. That's not civil, and it's not neighborly. In addition, none of the wild claims about the impending development of high-density, low-quality tenement blocks have come to pass. In fact, claims about the Crystal Spring developments have been made even in today's meeting, but those parcels were zoned RM2 and always legal for apartment development in that area. An academic dispute about the exact number of units that would have been built on those 3 or 4 lots is irrelevant to the fact that it was always property that could be converted into an apartment development by right, even without the 2024 zoning amendment. It's my understanding that the net effect of the zoning changes in total since 2024 has been relatively small. But that's the nature of trying to eliminate long-term structural barriers to affordable housing development. Nothing happens overnight, and eliminating as many barriers to creative, attractive, and interesting housing solutions as possible is a smart way forward, while retaining some common sense controls that the city can use to ensure that developments are reasonable. The current text of the zoning code, as amended, seems to do just that. If additional controls are needed, then by all means add them in future when appropriate. But please don't add any changes in capitulation to a small, loud, and obnoxious group with an axe to grind on this topic. I urge the council to retain the existing zoning amendment as passed in 2024. We like our neighbors in Roanoke, including new ones, and the more the merrier. Thank you.
Allison Georgensen, and Lauren Canary.
Welcome, Ms. Jorgensen.
Good evening, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of council, and City Manager Turner. My name is Allison Jorgensen. I serve as President and CEO of the Council of Community Services and as a member of the Blue Ridge Continuum of Care Governing Board. I'm also a resident. The Continuum of Care is the coalition of organizations that coordinates our region's efforts to prevent and end homelessness. Tonight, I ask you to vote against the proposed zoning amendments. Every day, our members work with individuals and families experiencing homelessness. While there are many reasons someone may lose housing, the greatest challenge we face today is not a lack of services, it's a lack of housing. The zoning changes adopted in 2024 were a meaningful step forward addressing that challenge. They were designed to gradually increase the supply of what is often called missing middle housing, creating more opportunities for people to find homes they can afford. The proposed amendments move us in the opposite direction. Additional parking requirements and reducing density allowances will not create more housing. They will make it more difficult and more expensive to build it. At a time when our community desperately needs additional housing units, we should be removing barriers, not creating new ones. Since 2019, the average rent for a modest one-bedroom apartment in Roanoke has increased by more than 60%. During that same period, homelessness in our region has increased by more than 25%. Those trends are connected. National research from the U.S. Government Accountability Office found that for every $100 increase in median rent, homelessness increases by approximately 9%. We are seeing that reality play out here in Roanoke. The consequences extend beyond affordability. Today, one of our own local permanent supportive housing providers has funding available to house approximately 80 additional people experiencing homelessness, but they cannot identify units to place them in. 80. Think about that for a moment. We have the funding, we have the programs, we have people ready to move into housing. What we don't have are homes. If we're serious about reducing homelessness, we must also be serious about increasing housing supply. The goals cannot be separated. I respectfully ask you to leave the 2024 zoning amendments in place and reject the proposed changes. Let's continue to move forward on housing rather than take a step backwards. Thank you.
Lauren?
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for letting us speak on this topic. My name is Lauren Canary. I'm a local resident physician in primary care. I live and work in Southeast. I don't represent the viewpoint of my employer necessarily, but I'm here today to ask you to keep the 2024 zoning amendments as they are, again, with opportunity for improvement in the future, but I certainly don't want us going back in time and back on the progress that we've made thus far. I come to you actually without knowing it, at the time, being a product of zoning reform. Sitting here like you, apparently in 1970, there was a group of county commissioners in Montgomery County, Maryland, who voted to ensure that every new development allowed for increased density and for affordability. So my mother, as a single parent, making just over $20,000 a year, was able to move my brother and I into a community that was mixed income. So I got to go to a great school and be with friends who had plans to go to college. You know, our circle was a little bit different than the rest of the neighborhood. It was a little smaller, more dense, didn't have the same kind of land that typical single-family zoning would require. But the result is that I was able to go into medicine and be here in front of you. And I'm certain that that wouldn't have been the case if we had had to live in a different community without the same kind of opportunities. So it really is personal for me and also to my patients. I'm increasingly seeing patients who are on fixed incomes that can no longer afford the cost of living in Roanoke and are making decisions about not taking their insulin and not filling their medications because they have to spend every dollar to keep the utilities on, to keep their air conditioning on in this heat. We just simply need more affordable housing options, as you know. And if you've been to the Ram House, if you've been to the rescue mission, you've seen the increasing number of elders that have made this community this amazing place to live and who can no longer afford to live here. It's dire. We don't have time. I love the historic housing, frankly, that we have, and I don't think this is a barrier to continuing to preserve it, but I'm just more concerned about the human beings whose lives are at stake, especially in the setting of the climate disasters that we're facing. Just this weekend, it was devastating heat. To that point, I also disagree with the parking requirements. I was looking at the really cool map you guys have on the city website that apparently citizen scientists help track the temperature across the city. And just out of curiosity, I looked at what the temperature was on my street in Southeast versus that of one of the plaintiffs on this lawsuit. I think he's also a primary care provider. We just have slightly different priorities. And the difference between the temperature in our homes is 15 degrees because of the tree canopy in Greater Dyer Lee versus Southeast. We don't need any more parking spaces. I don't have a car. I thankfully live, again, in Southeast off the 9th Street corridor that you all have prioritized in making a protected bike lane. It connects right to the Greenway. I can get to my clinic or to the hospital without needing a car, and would love to see more individuals enjoy this opportunity in the future. So again, I appreciate you hopefully keeping the zoning amendments as they are. And additionally, just hope that you'll separate the various amendments today. And finally, if you could consider any updates to allow for lockers and warming buses to operate so that TLOC can continue to do the important work they're doing. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That was our last speaker?
That was our last speaker.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to close the public hearing. And at this point, I'm going to turn to council members who may have clarifying questions or any follow-up questions on any of the zoning matters that are before us tonight before we move into of these sections. The ordinance before us is to consider all of this as a whole. If we as a council want to separate some of these things out, we certainly can do that. The easy likely be, and I'll turn to you, Ms. Carini, to do that by motion. So we'll get to that in a minute. But at this point, I want to ask if there are comments or questions that council members have in general or for points of clarification in the zoning requests that are before.
So
Mr. Hagan.
my question is the more historic one, and you might be able to help me, Ms. Gray. In 2024, what was the recommendation of the Planning Commission for the for the zoning amendments when those were passed?
There were two different times that the matter was heard,
Yeah.
and I do not have the exact numbers for both, but the first was in favor, and I believe the second one was opposed at the time.
Was there any reason why they were opposed the second time that you recall?
I do not have that information with me here today.
Those were the only clarifying questions I had about right now.
All right, I have a couple of just small scale questions, Ms. Gray. Under inpatient mental health and substance abuse clinic, which would provide a special exception, my question is, one of it is definition and language. And I was curious if this should be identified as a substance abuse clinic or if this should be a clinic addressing substance use disorder. I'm unclear on the language of that. I don't know if by code definition it should be a substance abuse clinic. I just know that the language, the wording has changed from substance abuse to substance use disorder.
Yes, and that is something that we have referred to both ways over time. The more current way, it's reflected as substance use, sorry, mental health and substance abuse clinic within the staff report, but substance use disorder is one of the ways that we have talked about it with the public as well.
And then related to that, and this is in the section on multiple purpose districts. I can't remember which page number. Are you able to explain the importance of having a 2-week short-term stay in relation to the longer-term stay in the regional housing code section? So I'm curious why we would reduce the number of this when it's my understanding, and maybe experts in this field can convey that a shorter stay is more effective in some situations. But my concern was, are we just trying to create a greater spectrum of lengths of stay for persons at these clinics?
So the underlying reason had to do with aligning temporary stays across our zoning ordinance. And we have, for example, permanent housing where people are staying longer than 30 days. We have temporary housing where people are staying less than 30 days. And so it was to provide that same alignment throughout that.
That was the only technical question I have. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a clarifying question. Ms. Gray, can you remind us the history? Council took action to allow accessory dwelling units prior to the residential zoning updates of 2024. Is that correct?
I believe it was in 2021 was the first time we did something. We expanded it in 2024, but 2021 would have been the first time.
Thank you. And would that allowance for ADUs still be in place under the citizen density compromise?
I do not have the citizen density compromise in front of me. So if you give me a few minutes, I could look at that and let you know. But I believe they were looking at counting accessory dwelling units as housing units, where currently under our current and under our proposed amendments, accessory dwelling units are allowed by right on any parcel with a single unit dwelling, regardless of a density restriction requirement. But if it becomes more than a single unit, then it counts as a unit.
Okay. Thank you. And I think that was my only clarifying question. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
About the data. Alliance was taken into consideration.
So the recommendations that were put forward before you were created and discussed with the community and put forward before we received that recommendation. And looking at the items that are listed in that recommendation, those are typically things that we would ask for during a zoning amendment request or during a Board of Zoning appeal request. So they're not all things that are specifically listed out within the current proposal before you, but they are things, most of these things are things that are already typically requested during our public hearing processes.
How many units since the passage of the 2024 zoning amendments do you attribute to being created as a result of the 2024 zoning amendments? And then I have a follow-up.
Sure, just 1 minute, let me. In From March of 2024 to 2025, the number of additional dwelling units from the zoning changes were 5 ADUs, extra units, 9 units as duplexes, 1 extra unit from being able to have 2 dwellings on a parcel instead of 1, 4 additional units from being able to have 3 dwellings on a parcel instead of 1, and then 8 extra units from being from the changes to the apartment requirement. From March of, so that totals 27 additional units, March of 2024 to 25. And then in March of 2025 to March of 2026, we had 6 additional units from being able to have the ADUs and 12 additional units from being able to have duplexes instead of single unit dwellings for a total of 18 total units. And so you'll notice that we had increasingly more duplexes over time, double the number we had previously had in the first year, and then triple the number that we had previously had in the second year by having it by right instead of requiring a special exception.
And do you have any data if that was mostly rentals or sales? And if so, was there a significant impact on the housing market within Roanoke City to reduce the price of housing?
Additional units is something that we always said would be a small change over time from zoning. And as council has previously discussed, and as the citizens here today to attest to, and as staff would attest to, this is a multifaceted issue, and zoning is one piece of solving our housing issue. You do see that we do have more of our missing middle housing being built when it is allowed by right versus when people have to go through an uncertain public process. So yes, there is some change. We had anticipated that it would be about a 2% change per year of additional housing unit. What we're finding is about 1.68 additional units. And so over time, it adds up to a number of units. But again, it is a piece of the solution, not the entirety of the solution.
Mr. Volleson.
That's great. Would it be fair to say that when we went through this the first time, we did say that there would be small changes and that, I guess, would it be fair to say that this zoning is working as it's supposed to? You just said that we are increasing middle housing. We are increasing by small amounts, which is what we've always said would be the case. And we haven't seen some dramatic drop in our neighborhood values.
Correct. I would say that. The one area I would say that these 2026 amendments do something that the 2024 didn't is it does add a housing standard for large-scale apartment buildings, which was not previously in place. And so it resolves something that was lacking in 2024. And that would prevent large areas being bought up and having a very large building built. But with that exception, I would say yes, the zoning amendments from 2024 did function very, very much like we had said was needed during our city plan 2040.
So the evidence is showing that it is correct, that what we did is doing what it's supposed to do.
It is showing that we are providing missing middle housing throughout our community. And I can find a slide if you'd like to see it. But what we saw in the first year, we had most of these additional housing units in the southwest and southeast portion of the city, and some in northwest and northeast. And in the second year, we had the majority of the additional units in northwest and northeast, with a few in southwest and southeast. And it is truly scattered throughout our entire city. The accessory dwelling units are scattered throughout, and the duplexes are scattered throughout as well.
When we went through this process, didn't we say that we would check in on this every year to look at the data, and that we knew that it wasn't going to be a static zoning code, and that we should look at the data and say, okay, if there's a problem, let's fix it. Like for example, the requirements about the apartment buildings. That's something we could do on its own. It's not something that needs to be a part of reducing density.
Correct. In looking at our zoning ordinance is something that we try to do about once a year. We have code changes that we'll need to make because we have different laws that have been passed by the Commonwealth of Virginia that we need to make changes to be in compliance with. And we have things that we find through lived experience that show us areas of our zoning ordinance that do need to be amended, and we put forward those for consideration at that time.
We're learning, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing. We're learning how to make sure that the zoning code stays in what we want it to be.
Correct.
And I would say that it's unfortunate that we are trying to change this so early on in the process. When you look at single family housing and when it was implemented back in the 80s, it's now had 40 years to show us what it's done. And what it's done is drive up our housing prices and made it so that there is only the most expensive way to build. So I just want to make the point that what we're doing is working the way it was supposed to, the way that we said it would, and we are doing the things that we said we would to make tweaks in the future if they're necessary.
Ms. Powers.
Ms. Gray, do you have any data on, since the city passed the derelict and blighted property, is any of that getting taken care of? I mean, you know, we increased the tax rate on that in hopes that people would fix it up or sell it, but I'm still seeing a lot of boarded up properties in our city, and we've talked about that. I've talked about that to people who are talking about affordable housing. That's certainly a way, because that is an older stock home that we could certainly help get fixed up, that people could afford it. And also what I'm hearing is, you know, the people that I'm talking to about the people who need housing is they can't afford to purchase a house because they wouldn't have the down payment. So we need more rental. So I would just like to know, are we getting any information? Do we have information on these boarded up properties? Because I'm truly not seeing that move.
I would say that I do not have that particular information here with me tonight, except to say that in my entirety of time with the city, when council set forth target areas within our community, one of the things that has been important to the citizens of our community is that existing buildings, existing dwellings be fixed up, being as important as building new. And so that is something that has always been a focus of any of the target areas. Properties have been acquired that have been vacant. They have been acquired either at the tax sale, or they had been acquired through the program that you're talking about, and rehabbed and made available to families for purchase.
All right. So we have the ordinance in its entirety before us. Is there interest on the part of council to remove by motion some of these items to vote on separately? Okay. If I can get some clarity on that, it seems it seems to me that one section would be the sections related to data centers and the data process facilities. If we wanted to remove that item from the ordinance and vote on that separately, that could be a matter of adopting what the zoning amendments are. We could also opt to, if we want further study on that with additional information shared, we could send that back as part of an initiating resolution to the planning staff and the planning commission to take into consideration some of the other requirements that might address some of the gaps. My initial thought is that I would support adopting the regulations that are in these zoning amendments related to data processing facilities and data centers, and then continuing to work with planning to add more to address those gaps so that we can take action on that tonight. Could we start with that section? There's some support to do that? Okay, so it's my sense that to do that, and Attorney Carini, would we need to move to amend the ordinance by removing section 36.2-407.3 related to data centers?
Could. I guess if the consensus is to adopt it as it is and then do a further study, then we don't need to remove it tonight. You want to keep it with the rest of the ordinance. Okay. Can't tell what the.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In some of the conversations, it seemed like we had possibly even unanimous support on some of these pieces. There's the data center components, the residential zoning, vape shops, and then the cleanup pieces. So I don't know, I would defer to how others are feeling, but if we're going to break it up, I think there are several items that could be split out.
The other option is, since there seems to be the most debate about the residential density, we could remove that for separate consideration and keep everything else and vote on everything else tonight. It would include the so you're moving that we remove 36.2-312 related to residential density, all the pieces connected with that. Am I getting that section right? Okay. Is that your motion? We're removing that
For separate
for
consideration.
separate consideration. We're going to consider that tonight. We're just removing it from the ordinance for separate consideration tonight. Okay.
Clarifying question, Mayor. Is it section 36.2-205 and 312? Is it, because I just want to make sure we're getting it correct, because it's the density. Do both of those deal with density, dimensional regulations?
Yeah, I want to make sure we're accurate on that. I'm not sure where I got those numbers from.
.205 would refer to multiple things. The 312 would refer to
Dimensional regulations for residential districts,
and then 409.1
dwellings.
is associated with that.
Okay, so it'd be those two?
Mhm.
That's my understanding. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
On the data centers, we're gonna move it along with as a package deal.
We would then consider everything else in the ordinance outside of 205 and 409.1. I mean, sorry, 312. Right, 409.1.
And we could come back and revisit the data center piece
Later, yeah.
and add some more
Yeah.
language to it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I believe the initiating resolution had actually addressed some of this as kind of collective with the citizens group, the data center stuff, to basically incorporate or to go back and increase potential restrictions for the data center stuff, as well as initiate things regarding the citizens proposal on the density aspect. More or less that's, and also incorporate stuff like changes in state law and cleanup. Basically, it did all of that stuff, if I recall correctly, from the email that Ms. Carini sent.
Correct. So I, for everyone's benefit, I have created a method to kind of take some of the discussion that you are having and have a new process to begin after tonight. And So the process is, we call it an initiating resolution. That is how we start every zoning amendment process. That's how we started this zoning amendment process earlier this year. It's how we started the 2024 zoning amendments, is you adopt a resolution that refers specific topics back to planning staff, and then it will go back to the planning commission for their review, public hearing, and would come back to city council after all of those steps happen. So that is a tool that you could use to take out the pieces that you have questions, further questions, you would like further consideration of. As Mr. Hagan said, the 4 topics that I have prepared in a resolution are residential density, further review of the data center regulations, review by planning staff of all the changes that came with the July 1st state code changes, and then just kind of a 4th catch-all for planning staff to make any cleanups that they see as they go through this process again.
I mean, that's what I was getting ready to jump in and say is she sent the email on July 2nd where she broke them up into the 4 categories. So why are we not just defaulting to this?
So here's my personal issue with this. I don't support the citizens group recommendations. And so I couldn't support an initiating resolution that's referring those back. I very clearly supported the original zoning amendments. This will be the 3rd time I'm voting on them. I think they're right. I think they're the best direction for the city. I'm not yielding from that. I do appreciate the work that's gone into this. I will say that my frustration is not with the effort that the citizens group proposal has put into this. I recognize that and honor that. But when language like this appears that says, citizens group will not challenge by right development in other zoning districts so long as the numbers in red typeface are adopted. That is not a spirit of compromise. We took a good faith effort to address this thoroughly. And I think the staff has done an extraordinary job of listening wholeheartedly. And I just completely disagree with this. I don't think this is the way to move forward. I don't think it is reflects the whole of the city. It reflects a group in the city, which I honor that, but I disagree with it. And so I needed to say that. I can support an initiating resolution that does everything but send back the residential district density requirements. And if I need to, I'll make a motion. We have a motion on the table, I believe, but we never got a second to it.
Now I'm questioning the motion.
Right. So we'll wait on that. So if we want to consider this initiating resolution, we can do that. But I need some clarity from council if we want to consider the initiating resolution before we consider anything else.
So I have no problems with the data center as it is to get it in as a placeholder until we can take a look as to other things. Because right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Gray, if a data center wanted to come in over on, say, anywhere there's an industrial warehouse, they theoretically could, correct? Like without any sort of oversight, they do it by right.
There would be opportunity that would not be best addressed without the changes that are proposed before you tonight.
So, yes. I apologize. I'm you know,
The lawyer
just
in you.
The lawyer in me. Yeah. So that raises that concern. Like, but at the very least, this is a way of actually addressing a continued conversation with both community groups and you know, residents at large.
I would. I think we're all in agreement on the data centers. I prefer jobs over data centers. But what I can't get along with is what Mayor Cobb can get along with, which is having our planning department go for a 4th time looking at residential density, because they have looked at this now 3 times. That's a lot of time and effort and resources to go and look at this again when they have already come to us today with their recommendation.
Concern, and this is something which I know hasn't been addressed too much. Anytime you increase density, you raise the risk of increasing the need for services. And we are having problems now with both permitting, recycling, the school system. Take your pick, Peter, or
Those are
Councilman
not due
Ballison.
to housing
No,
issues.
but if you increase it, you run the risk of increasing that cost to us. And
Again-
that is a long-term concern. of
And
mine.
again, we have been, the changes have created a small number.
That builds, as was what Ms. Gray said.
And exactly, and that's what we've said is as things become apparent or start to become like they
And it's
might be an
starting.
issue, then you go and put in something to fix them. You don't fix a problem that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, but you can plan ahead.
Okay, let's refrain from talking over each other. I think there is a strong sense to deal with the data center portion of this, so I'd like for us to do that. Based on the ordinance, and Attorney, can you, this would be section 36.2-409.1, specific to data centers, is that correct?
36.2-407.3 is the supplemental regulations on data centers. On page 27.
If I can get some clarity about which sections that includes so that we could at least vote on that matter.
I believe for the data center, you want to look at section 36.2-407.3 data center, as well as the use table for planned unit development, section 36.2-327.
Say that second one again.
327.
I apologize. 36.2-407.3.
Correct.
And what about 36.2-409? I'm sorry, I've mixed up the categories here. So 407.3, and were there any others?
327, you also want to look at the use tables that would allow data centers or data processing facilities.
And that's, tell me again what that section is.
327 addresses it in the planned use development district.
Oh, let's see. Okay. Thank you. Now I see it. Okay.
And could it also be for all of the tables that would address these uses? Could we do it with that?
Could be, yes.
So for multiple purpose districts as well. In addition, we also have the Appendix A definitions that would include aspects of this.
So 36.2-322 is the multiple purpose districts,
Correct.
correct?
Oh, no, it's 315.
Sorry.
Number then name.
Thank you for that correction. And then you said the table
Sure.
or appendix, my apologies.
Also, the Appendix A definitions.
Okay. So just to reiterate that again, 407.3, 327, 315, and Appendix A definition.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to, is that the appropriate to remove?
If you would like to consider these sections separately, yes.
A motion to remove these sections to vote on separately.
Those sections are the
These-
data center.
These are related to data center with the exception of the multipurpose district, but that's included in that section.
Just to be perfectly clear, there's other changes in some of those sections that don't relate to data centers, so.
Right.
But yes, these
And
four
are
sections.
are those cleanup amendments?
The definition sections has some.
Definition has some
substantive.
residential. So this would be exclusive to data centers, right?
Would we be able to do it solely for data centers and data processing facilities in the sections that we named?
Because the multiple purpose district also talks about vape shops, so I know we
Right,
don't want
okay.
to,
Guess what's next?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that that would be next.
So, okay, so we're looking at sections 36.2-407.3, which is only related to data centers. 36.2-327, which is the PUD use tables, which I think the only changes are data centers. No. So we will clarify that only applies to the changes to data centers. Section 36.2-315, multiple purpose districts only as it applies to data centers. And then Appendix A definition only as it applies to data centers.
That's a very question made. Excuse me, that captures the staff recommendations on data centers. Just clear, like, I think I heard that.
And planning staff confirm that those 4 sections capture all the changes to data centers.
So my understanding is what council is doing is removing the items related to data center, data processing facilities in the 4 sections that we mentioned, which was 407.3, 322, 315, 327, and then Appendix A.
All right, so do I have someone wants to make that motion?
Make the motion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor McGuire and Councilwoman Sanchez Jones. And now we're open for further discussion on that motion.
Discussion on what?
On that motion. This is just related to data centers and, okay, any discussion on this? Mr. Volleson?
I just want to make a clarifying statement. There's been rumors that I'm for data centers, and I want to make it very clear that I am not for any data centers within our city. I believe that data centers are a piece of the economy of the future, and that they have a necessity in some way, shape, or form. But when it comes to large parts of land here in the city, we need to be focusing on things that bring in jobs more than computers. And so that's where I've always stood on this, is that within the city limits, there should not be any data centers. And so I'm glad that we are doing this.
Other discussions or comments? Mr. Hagan, and then on.
Ms. Carini, just a legal question. This would only apply to data centers within Roanoke city limits, correct? Just as a...
That is correct.
Awesome. So what happens if there's, say, a data center that chooses to utilize some resource such as water from out that we have control of that is outside of Roanoke City itself? We would have no control over it?
This would not apply. We would only have the control that we have, as you said, on the water board, water authority.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarifying question or answer. Excuse me. Yeah. It's a long day.
All right. Other discussion?
I just want to thank you, Mayor, for the chance to say I strongly support what we're doing in putting some basic foundational guardrails in place. And I really support coming back and working on what we're discussing, which is perhaps some strengthening that would be, if appropriate. And I'll just, say I am very concerned about the rapid explosion of these kinds of facilities, especially in Virginia, where we're the data center capital of the world. And I hope that all of council, that we'll continue to focus on this. I don't support the project that's proposed and approved in Botetourt. I think that's a huge I don't think Roanoke City gets really anything out of that. And I think that we really made a mistake in giving our support to that. So I hope that, personally hope that that all falls apart. But I really am concerned about this. And I think that as we move forward, we cannot just take the word of economic development folks that come and tell us how this is going to generate millions or billions of dollars. That may be true. But we are not hearing anything about the horrendous environmental impacts, the air pollution impacts, the horrible, the insane amount of water consumption that some of these facilities utilize, the effluent that they produce, the wastewater that's highly toxic. Who's going to process that? Or is that going to be a Western Virginia Water Authority responsibility? Are we going to pay for that? I just think there are so many questions about these facilities, and I really feel like they're being crammed and rushed forward in a way that is absolutely not putting communities first. And so I feel very strongly about this issue, and I really appreciate council taking some first steps to put some very, I think, common sense basic protections in place.
So the motion before us and second is to remove these from the ordinance. Do we need to to vote on that just to remove it and then do a separate motion to adopt?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
So the motion before us is to remove from the ordinance. So that's the first motion that we need to vote on. Is there any discussion on removing it? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Powers? Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye. So it has been removed from the ordinance. Now I need a motion to adopt these sections related to data centers and data process facilities.
So moved.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Hagan and Sanchez Jones. All right. Any further discussion on that motion? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye. And that is approved. Thank you. All right.
Down.
So, yeah, one down. All right. The next section that we could look at is, my notes here.
Vape tobacco.
Yes, so the sections related to, I think, the vaping issues, but also the cleanup issues. I think there are some that are just cleanup issues in here. Mr. Volleson?
Didn't we also have cannabis? Did we do zoning for cannabis in this as well?
Oh,
I don't recall seeing that for
I-
cannabis
I
because
thought
it
we did
wasn't.
have something.
It was so new when this was being initiated that we didn't know what the governor was going to do, and at least, and I don't know why
I just remember at the public hearings, we
Yeah,
had something about cannabis, and I want to make sure that that was done if we did it.
if I recall correctly, it was like literally just like we're waiting to see what happens in Richmond, and yeah, so, but that
I just wanted to
I don't want to speak for you all. I just realized that I was doing that.
so Ms. Gray, can you advise us on which sections? So there are, I'm concerned here about doing the sections that deal with vape and tobacco establishments, but also some of the cleanup sections.
If I
In other
may.
words,
Mhm.
everything outside of residential.
Give me a minute for those two together. Vape or retail sales of vape and tobacco establishments is section 315, 426.1, and appendix A. And let me work on the others for a minute and I'll bring those
Okay,
back.
so the vape and tobacco, say those sections again.
Section 315,
Okay,
426.1,
okay,
and appendix A.
okay, thank you. We could at this point just take out the residential sections.
That's the remaining issue for discussion. It may be easier to remove those and then everything else would be remaining.
Let's do that. So a motion to remove the sections related to residential density, and that would be 312 and 315.
I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, 36.2-205, 312, 409.1.
I think based on what I've heard from council today, removing section 312 alone would deal with the underlying concerns that you have about density, but leave things in place such as the standards for large-scale apartment buildings. That is not related to the density particularly, but just the form of the building itself.
Say that section again.
The section, from what I've heard tonight, that I believe council is most concerned with is section 36.2-312, which deals with the density on particular parcels.
Yes.
The parking minimum is actually incorporated in section 409.1.
All right.
Ms. Greeny, the bill that recently was passed by the General Assembly, how would that, regarding parking minimums and signed by the governor, how would that impact this?
We haven't looked at it super closely, but I believe it got rid of most minimums with some, I think the minimum was a half of a space per unit for certain dwellings. And I think, I just don't know the specifics of that. Staff would need to consider the new bill that was passed on July 1st and compare it to what we currently have and then make any necessary changes.
That could go in the initiating resolution if we want to include that. I just want to be clear. Yeah, I just want to be clear on the residential sections of related to dimensional regulations. Would that not also include 205? Front yard? Permitted yard encroachments? Two oh five and 312, and then the one you mentioned, 409-1.
Correct.
Right. So do we have a motion to remove section 36.2-205, 312, and 409-1 to consider that it has to deal with residential density? Or move it, then we can consider that separately, and then we can go back to what remains in the ordinance to consider as a whole. Right. Motion to do that?
Yes, so moved.
That's what I heard.
Yes, it's you hear the gears. So moved.
All right, do I have a second? Second, Ms. Powers, thank you. All right, this is just to remove those sections for further consideration. Any discussion on the motion to remove? All right,
Make sure that this is removing the density.
these are the sections related to residential density.
To consider them separately.
We'll
not
consider them separately.
Getting rid of them.
Yeah. All right, so Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Just for clarification, I just want to make sure that clerk and I have the right ones, 205, 312, 409.1. Okay.
Powers?
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Vice Mayor McGuire. Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson. And Mayor Cobb.
Aye. So we're removing those for consideration. We're going to set those over here for right now. Now let's come back to the ordinance, and we can now consider everything else that remains in the ordinance, which would include the vape and tobacco establishments and the cleanup items. Is that correct, Ms. Gray? Right.
That is correct.
All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the,
Let's do, just because we've kind of removed things, let's first have a motion to consider the ordinance with the density piece removed and the data centers, since we already approved
Okay.
those.
so an appropriate motion would be to consider the ordinance as a whole with the residential density sections removed and the data centers removed. Vice Mayor?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Hagan. Thank you for your patience. We're getting there. All right. Any discussion on that motion? All right, Madam Clerk.
So this is just a vote to bring the ordinance with everything but those sections, and then we will have a second vote to approve.
Powers. Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson. Mayor Cobb.
Aye. All right. So the ordinance without the residential density and the data centers that we voted on earlier is before us for consideration. Is there discussion on that? Vice Mayor.
Well, I would voice support for this, and I particularly want to thank Councilman Nash for his work on the vape shop initiative, and also thank staff who have been, as I understand it, working with him hand in hand on that. I also appreciate the cleanup and getting our internal documents updated. But just, yeah, would speak in favor of it.
Thank you. Others? Ms. Powers?
So this vape shop thing, does it have anything to do with what the state approved on vape shops? For the numbers of them and all this, are we good?
Hopefully not.
I'm just asking. I don't want to make sure we mess up anything since we were told that today.
I think there may be additional changes needed now that it's July 1st, but I don't think anything that we adopt tonight is contrary to state law.
State law has some of its own zoning regulations with distances that a retail location has to be from certain sensitive areas. And I want to say off the top of my head, it's 2,000 feet, which is pretty in line with what we pushed for and did here locally with vape shops. So even if we do have to do some amendments and some changing, I always knew that would be the case. You know, I was always hoping our state would do more and step up and kind of protect people, right? So, so some changes will have to occur, but it shouldn't completely derail anything tonight.
I do want to thank Councilman Nash for his initiative and what he's done for this, because I think it is, these vape shops just attack our young people, and it is just not healthy for them. So I appreciate all your work and council's work on doing this.
Thank you.
Mr. Hagan, and then
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Yeah, I appreciate all your work, Councilman Nash, about for doing this. I know that I've had my concerns about it, and you were able to sure alleviate many of them. So I really do appreciate it. Looking forward to voting.
And I just want to say thanks as well to my colleague, Mr. Nash, on your initiative for vape shops. I know working in the schools, I see a lot of young people addicted to vaping. And no matter how much you tell them that it's not good for them, they do not listen. So I'm happy for that. And I'm also happy that we as council have taken on the initiative to have our own set of guidelines for data centers, where we didn't have a say in Buttertop, but we have a say in Roanoke City. So thank you for doing that.
To you all. All right. I believe we're ready to vote on this matter. Or
We need a motion to approve.
we need a
the
motion to
ordinance
approve.
as amended.
To approve the ordinance as amended with those things removed.
Correct.
All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Council Members Hagan and Nash. All right. The motion is before us. And Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson. Mayor Cobb.
Aye. All right. The only thing left before us tonight is the matter related to residential density, and that's sections 205, 312, and 409-1. So we have in the ordinance, we have the recommendations from both the Planning Commission and the Planning Department before us. And that's the ordinance that is before us, the section of the ordinance that's still before us to vote on. So is there discussion on that ordinance?
May I make just a quick statement? Since now we're talking specifically about the density. Under state code, planning staff has followed all the requirements to get us to where we are today. The state code is very clear about if you reduce density, there are many steps that need to be taken. Written notices have to be sent to all homeowners affected. Public hearings need to be had, including public advertising. So if any changes from what is in front of you today are to be made, I am recommending, in order to comply with state code, that that process is started again through an initiating resolution to send it back to staff and the Planning Commission so that all the process steps can be made.
Thank you for that important note of clarification and information. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Turner.
Thank you. I'd like to just further comment on Ms. Carini's comments. It would be extremely difficult. Staff does not have the capacity right now. So just keep that in mind when should you make that decision. If you want that done immediately, we would essentially have to stop operations in order for that to happen. But I mean, obviously we'll do as directed, but from a capacity standpoint, we don't have it right now.
I appreciate you saying that, and considering that we just went through this process over the last year, I have serious concerns about sending it back, but I'm one person on council, and now is an opportunity for us to share comments or questions about this, these sections related to residential density. I know we've had some comments scattered throughout the evening, but this is the focus time for us to do that.
A comment, Mayor. I wanted to just speak in favor of, and I also want to thank everyone who has been engaged on this. I know it has been a long haul. I support the 50-50 compromise in the density, and I just wanted to offer some thoughts on that and clarify that it's not a rollback. I don't support a rollback. I don't like everything in the citizen compromise, and it is my hope that we can continue, that zoning, as was pointed out to me, is a fluid process, and that we will continue to make improvements and adjustments as needed. I would have generally preferred a more a different way to tackle increasing housing in our city. I would have liked to see something a little more thoughtful and surgical along the lines of targeting our neighborhood village centers, building off of the Mosaic program and plan, being really intentional and thoughtful about where do we want to increase, really drive revitalization, being creative about how can we drive residential growth and mixed-use development at Valley View and places like around the Civic Center. And instead, we had kind of I don't think it was a one-size-fits-all approach because it was, tailored. It got less dense as it went out, but it was a mass rezoning. And that being said, where we are today, though, is that I think if this council were moving forward with just the citizen compromise, the 50-50 language that was put forward, there would be a tremendous amount of pushback from a lot of residents. And what that tells me, we also heard from folks in support of more density that we don't think that it goes far enough and that we should be allowing even more density from what the 2024 amendments allowed. And so what I hear is that there are people on both sides of this, and that I can see that folks opposed to this made a lot of concessions, and I respect that. I don't, again, I'm not totally in support of exactly how the citizen compromise was written, but I can support that because what it will still allow is, we're talking about needing missing middle housing. That's what we keep hearing. And I'll also say we hear a lot affordability is thrown around. Well, it was explained to me that these zoning amendments were never expressly about affordability. They were about building more housing. And then there's a theory, a trickle-down housing economic theory, that if we build lots more housing, that's going to somehow create affordable housing. And those affordable is, subjective to the person who's paying the rent. I just kind of have a problem with that. I think that we could have been doing a lot of things. This city council is moving forward with a more aggressive legislative agenda and asking the state and Richmond for help. We did that in our most recent legislative agenda and achieved some progress that's going to help. I think that we should be doing more aggressive code enforcement and cracking down on slumlords. That has been something that many neighborhood plans have called for decades. And I still don't think that we're up to par on that. I don't see us updating or revamping our public transportation plan. We are building hundreds, if not thousands, of new apartment units out on Orange Avenue. What's the plan to alleviate that traffic? I haven't seen any updated traffic or public transportation plan specifically as it would intersect with the zoning updates. Why are we not, right now, I give staff credit and I thank Ms. Turner that we're going through a process to reform and repair and rebuild our planning and building department. There are issues, the backlogs on permits is something that we have known about for this has been a long-standing problem. So that's, we could be cracking down on Airbnb, illegal Airbnbs. We know, code enforcement has told us, we know that there's a list of those, or we know that there's some idea of where these are. I haven't seen any updates on where council is cracking down on where the city is cracking down on illegal Airbnbs. Some of us have been pushing, and I appreciate Mr. Bratton working on the vacant and blighted homes program. I pointed out, and others have, I think there was an article in the Cardinal News sometime back about the work that Lynchburg is doing and how they have made significant progress in flipping and getting their vacant and blighted properties reoccupied. Why have we not been doing that? We're starting that process. Working with Carillion on workforce housing. Why are we not being more proactive with Carillion to bring them to the table and say, that's a huge part of our housing puzzle. So I bring up a few of those things to say, I don't think that this was done in a very comprehensive, holistic way. I think that there was a lot more consideration that could have been put into impacts. And as we heard tonight, zoning is only one piece of creating housing. All of those other items that I mentioned, I think absolutely have to be addressed as well. And we can't just pass zoning that allows maximum density or a lot more density and hope that solves our affordable housing challenges. I really appreciate Smart Towns, and I met with the Blue Ridge Behavioral Health folks. And again, I just don't think, I am very sympathetic. I strongly support more affordable housing. I just don't see where these zoning amendments do that. And in fact, the folks with Blue Ridge Behavioral Health were telling me that the cap on fair market rent for, I believe this is for a Housing Choice Section 8 voucher in Roanoke, is with utilities around $1,053 a month. None of these new units that are being built, none of this new construction is going to fall into that. So we're not building affordable housing. Across the country, I think you can see localities that have gotten rid of or done away with their single family zoning or done similar efforts to this, I should say Portland, Austin, Minneapolis. They have stabilized their market-based rents. They have stabilized, rents that are going up, market-based rents. So here in Roanoke, that has gone up significantly, but what folks are looking for affordable housing is like $400, $500, $600 a month. And I just don't see how these zoning amendments that were passed address that at all. And the last thing I would say is, in the spirit of this being a compromise, it's still going to allow by right. It's still to the goal, the incremental goal of updating our zoning. It gets rid of, however you want to frame it, single-family zoning citywide. That is a concession that the citizen group made in supporting the compromise. So by right development across the city of ADUs and or duplexes, and depending on where you live in the city, triplexes and quadplexes, or a 3-unit townhouse or a 4-unit town. Those are the missing middle. I don't think we need more small apartment buildings. So being able to build by right duplex, triplex, and quadplex is a significant, I think, expansion of housing that's going to allow hundreds, if not thousands, of new units to be built. And to the point of our planning staff, when I met with them, we can always make these adjustments. If this goes well, and if we can rebuild trust with our public and also show that we are addressing all of these other issues that also affect housing and housing costs in the city, I am absolutely committed to looking at this again in the future to see where could additional adjustments be made, where might it make sense for there to be more density, where is it working, where is it not working. And I think it went too far too fast. I think a 50-50 compromise on the density is very fair. I fully recognize that not everyone agrees with that, and I appreciate the differences of opinion. And I also want to thank everyone on both sides of this that has engaged in the debate without resorting to name calling or personal attacks. I think that has become far too common on both sides of the political aisle, and I think that we can make our points. We should be able to make our points clearly and effectively without singling anyone out or calling people names. So I will be supporting that 50-50 density compromise and look forward to working with all of the groups that have been in touch with me. And I appreciate that on how we can continue working on this issue.
Mr. Ellison.
First off, I just want to say that zoning isn't the only thing. And that's, as a part of council, like, my biggest thing is affordable housing. That's why we've worked on creating legislation in the state to improve our land banking. Those are things that we've been doing for the past 3 years. We've built affordable housing, or the workforce housing loan fund. This zoning was not done in isolation. There is a toolkit. There are things that we have been working on tirelessly for the past 2 years. Now, I will say that I agree that we should be doing more of that. But the problem is that we're here looking at zoning that's actually working and doing what it's supposed to. And now we're going to then tell our planning and zoning, my understanding is that you guys want to now go and study the community version, or I would say the Dr. Stavola version, because it's not really the community. The community told us in 2040 plan what they wanted, and that was what we did in our zoning. So we're wasting time on zoning. This whole year we've wasted looking at this zoning for a third time, even though it's working the way that we said that it would. It's a piece of the puzzle, but we had somebody that decided that they wanted to throw up a lawsuit. And they used that lawsuit to try and get us to go and change everything and basically repeal what we did. And I think that's a travesty. So I agree with you. There are a lot of other things that we could be doing, and there are a lot of other things that we can do in the next year if we don't sit here and try to nitpick zoning. Because the thing that I've learned from this is that nobody is going to be completely happy with our zoning. This is now the third time we've looked at it. You now want to look at it a fourth time. When does it end? What I am going to read for you, though, is what I had as my prepared comments for why I believe this is important, why we should continue with the 2024 zoning, and I'm going to go to those now. This is the letter that I wrote and sent to all of you, and I want to read into the record. Dear colleagues, I'm writing to you not just as a fellow member of council, but as someone who has spent a great deal of time studying, shaping, and defending zoning amendments we adopted in 2024. I understand the political pressure, the calls and emails, the intensity of the concerns being raised, but I also believe strongly that overturning these reforms would make a serious mistake for the long-term future of Roanoke. Let's start with the current moment. Much of the pushback we're hearing is driven by fear of change, fear of the unknown, and in some cases, fear fueled by misinformation. We're hearing claims that these zoning changes will destroy neighborhoods, collapse property values, overwhelm infrastructure. These claims are not new, and more importantly, they are not supported by evidence. Cities across the country have adopted similar reforms, and the outcomes are clear. In Minneapolis, allowing more housing types citywide has contributed to stabilizing rents relative to peer cities. In Portland, legalizing duplexes and small multifamily housing led to a surge in missing middle housing production, much of it priced below traditional single-family homes. In Arlington and Alexandria, incremental zoning changes have expanded housing supply without catastrophic impacts opponents predicted. These are not theoretical exercises, they are real-world case studies demonstrating that modest zoning reform works. And if we want a local example, we don't have to look too far. Downtown Roanoke is our proof point. 25 years ago, downtown struggled with vacancy and disinvestment. What changed? We allowed more flexibility, more housing types, more mixed-use development, more people living where they worked and spend their time. That decision transformed downtown into a thriving, walkable district. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen because we preserved the status quo. It happened because we allowed evolution. Now we're being asked to deny the same opportunity to the rest of the city. Yes, this citizen compromise, or Stavola compromise as I'm calling it, some of that you're looking to support is a de facto repeal on the 2024 zoning amendments. We should also be honest about the history behind our zoning code. Many of the restrictions we are now revisiting, such as large lot requirements, separation of uses, limits on housing types, trace their roots back to policies that were designed in part to exclude. Even when not explicitly discriminatory, they reinforced patterns of segregation and limited access to opportunity. Reintroducing a broader mix of housing is one of the most effective ways we can begin to reverse those outcomes. This is reinforced by the Equity Empowerment Advisory Board's request that our redlining policies be undone. The 2024 zoning reforms achieve that goal and start our path toward repairing the damage of urban renewal. This is not about forcing change on neighborhoods. The amendments do not mandate redevelopment. They allow it incrementally, modestly, and over time. A homeowner might choose to build an accessory dwelling unit for a parent. A small developer might convert a single home into a duplex. These are small distributed changes that collectively create a more flexible and resilient housing system. Let's also talk about the housing reality we face. We know that a significant share of renters in Roanoke are cost burdened. We know that demand for housing is outpacing supply in key parts of the city. And we know that if we fail to address this imbalance, costs will continue to rise, pushing residents out and limiting our ability to attract new talent and investment. Overturning these zoning reforms will not make these problems go away, it will make them worse. Restrictive zoning constrains supply. Constrained supply drives up higher prices. Higher prices reduce access. This is not a matter of ideology, it is basic economics. If we are serious about affordability, we cannot ignore the role zoning plays in limiting the types and quantity of housing we allow. There is also a broader economic dimension that we should not overlook. Housing is infrastructure for our workforce. Employers like Ringana, considering whether to locate and expand in Roanoke, are asking a simple question. Can their employees find housing that meets their needs at a price they can afford? If the answer is no, we lose those opportunities. The 2024 amendments position us to answer yes. They also support walkability and sustainability. two goals we have repeatedly affirmed as a council. When we allow more housing in existing neighborhoods, particularly near jobs and services, we reduce sprawl and shorten commutes. That means fewer vehicle miles traveled, lower emissions, and more efficient use of infrastructure. It also means more foot traffic for local businesses and stronger neighborhood economies. I want to address directly the concern about neighborhood character. Character is not defined by a single housing type. It is defined by people, by the life and activity that makes a place feel like a community. Many of our most cherished neighborhoods already contain a mix of housing forms. What we are doing is not introducing something foreign, we are restoring a level of diversity that once existed and that continues to define successful, walkable places. The idea that allowing a duplex or a small apartment building will somehow unravel the fabric of a neighborhood is not grounded in reality. It's an exaggerated fear that has been raised in every city that considered these reforms and has not materialized. At a certain point, we have to separate legitimate policy concerns from arguments that simply do not hold up under scrutiny. We do and should monitor outcomes, adjust policies as needed, and invest in the infrastructure where growth occurs. But reversing course entirely based on speculative fears would undermine the thoughtful, data-driven process that led us here. We should also consider the message it would send. If we overturn these amendments now, after extensive public engagement and careful deliberation, we signal that long-term planning can be undone by short-term pressure. We signal to residents, developers, and businesses that our policies are not stable, and we risk losing credibility at a moment when we need to demonstrate leadership and consistency. None of this is to suggest that the current policy is perfect or that it cannot be refined. Zoning is not static, and we should continue to evaluate its impacts. But there is a significant difference between refining a policy and repealing it altogether. The 2024 zoning amendments represent a balanced approach. They allow incremental growth, expand housing options, and align the goals we have set for equity, sustainability, and economic development. They are not radical, and they are responsible. Colleagues, we were elected to make decisions that serve the long-term interests of Roanoke, even when those decisions are not immediately popular. Leadership requires us to look beyond the loudest voices in the room and consider the broader trajectory of our city. The choice before us is clear. We can move forward, building on the progress we have made, learning from implementation, and continuing to expand opportunity to our residents, or we can turn back, reinstating policies that we know limit housing, constrain growth, and perpetuate inequalities. I urge you to stay the course. And I would say that this whole zoning process, our goal has been to address affordability, reduce homelessness, and increase the attractiveness of our city to potential employers. This is bigger than someone's backyard. This is our community.
Thank you, Mr. Paulison. Other comments, questions?
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. So I'm not going to bury the lead here. I support the citizens compromise. I think that that's clear, and that's actually a compromise from what I was, which was, I was for repeal. And the reasons for that is that I have real concerns about, the use of by right in this way. And the reason is that, generally speaking, when people don't feel like they have a voice in government or in their community, they tend to get litigious. And speaking as a lawyer, we like to get paid. So regardless of how people feel, that cost is just going to be passed on to from developers that have to go to court, that have to deal with this, that type of thing. The citizen compromise, the amendments presented don't actually address that concern that I have with this, but I'm a political realist. I'm more inclined with going with the citizen compromise because for so long it has felt to a good portion of the community that council has not listened to people. And this has been something which has been consistent both before I was running, while I've been serving, and well before all this. So for me, that's a better concern that I, have to deal with. And, the reason why I asked about the parking is because there are legitimate concerns, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it with people. I think, but some of this is going to be usurped or what's the term? Preempted by state law. That's the way that the system works. As for the charge that this is just a repeal, it's not. It really isn't. And the reason why I know that it's not a repeal is that while, there are members that will argue like we're giving the same benefits that downtown had, that Grandin had, that these types of things had. Except there's one little tidbit that's not being mentioned. Zone downtown allows for mixed use. These don't. This is residential, correct? I mean, Ms. Gray, you might, does any of this address downtown zoning? Any of the potential changes that we have? Downtown zoning allows for mixed use. I could theoretically put as many units as I would like on property that I have downtown and with mixed use for commercial and residential. Nothing prevents that.
Correct.
Yeah.
The building code would bring in the requirements that you would have to meet.
Yeah, so I could theoretically, and I love this one, I would have a tattoo parlor where down in the shop while living above it. Nothing prevents that. That's the difference. What we're talking about here with these residential aspects are residential zoning. So the argument that this will lead to more, and this isn't, you're fine, I'm good. So sorry. I'm on my high horse. But yeah, I know. The argument that it will bring about a more walkable city doesn't really work in my view, because while it does increase density with these 2024 zoning, it kind of just increases the residential aspect. It doesn't increase the other aspects. Now, I respect the idea that like increasing the amount will decrease cost, basically increasing supply reduces demand. The problem with that, though, is we treat land a little bit differently than goods and services. So it's true, when you increase supply of goods and services, that drives costs down. But there is a fundamental thing when it comes to land sales is location, location, location. And that's what tends to matter more. So while I respect Councilman Vollison's view on this, and anybody that chooses to not want the citizens' proposal, and I get that, I respect their opinions, but I think that that's the best way forward. And regardless of, it's better than what we have, in my view, for the long-term health of our city. I know that there's plenty of people that will disagree with me. I know that there's plenty of people that want to currently nod their heads at me and be absolutely like, yeah, they're going to disagree with me. And I respect that. Like, I will, love to have a conversation with you about this. That's where I think that, though, I think that's best for the long-term health that we amend this with the citizens' proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Others? Ms. Powers.
So I've listened, I've sat here and listened, and I respectfully want to say that I respect everybody's opinion. And we're going to all have difference of opinions. I respect our citizens. I have now spent 45 years of my life in this city, and I love this city, or I would not have stayed here this long. I've heard our citizens for many, many years tell me how they don't trust us. Even when we made changes to tax laws, and, they just felt like we didn't hear them. So I think compromise is great, and we can start there. And we've all talked about starting small, and we can reach out in the future and change things. But I want to go back to something that Ms. Durek said to us today. about what our leaders, what our people did for us 250 years ago. I'm sure there was compromise done on that. Can you imagine having to write the Declaration of Independence and satisfy everybody in a new country? So I think we're forgetting up here that we need to respect each other. When we lose respect, we lose the ability to attain or get anything done. Now, January's coming, and there's a good possibility that you can have 3 brand new people sitting up here, and things are going to change. And we have to respect that. We just got criticized for going too fast on voting on something with the flock stuff, the Raven stuff. So, are we moving too fast again? So, and you're all going to have your opinions, and that's fine. But you know, I think the compromise is a good thing to do, and I respect everybody's opinion, but I'm going to have to support our citizens.
I have a question for clarification because, and go ahead, Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Joe, I think you're asking that same question I'm thinking.
I'm confused. What's before us is a compromise. And I'm uncertain as to what, when some of my colleagues talk about supporting the compromise, which compromise you're supporting, because the ordinance that's before us is a compromise. So I would like some clarity on that for my colleagues, because what's not before us is the citizens group proposal. That is not before us in this vote that we're considering right now. So it'd be helpful for me to know what you mean by compromise, because if you're supporting the compromise, the citizens group proposal as a compromise, that has to go back through a whole nother process, similar to what we just went through. And that's very problematic to me for a lot of reasons. Ms. Turner alluded to some of those concerns. The planning staff is already, they've devoted extraordinary amount of time to this. I will just say that though I continue to be consistent in my support for the original zoning amendments, I am open to supporting the compromise in this ordinance. So that is a step in a direction that I would prefer not to go, but I'm willing to go there because I think this has had a thorough examination. And I would prefer that it end there. I don't support sending any of this back yet again. I think that's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think we're talking about and I'm sorry to say this, but this is my feeling based on what I'm hearing from a broad-based group of citizens. This is a small group of citizens that have done a lot of hard work on this and care deeply about our city and our neighborhoods. And I appreciate that and respect it. But I don't think it's representative of the majority of citizens in our city. The compromise, I think, gets us a step closer there. So it would help me to know as we're going into this, what those of you who have said I support the compromise, what exactly are you supporting? Ms. Sanchez Jones.
I just want to say that I support the 2024 amendments because they were designed to expand housing opportunity, address our city's housing shortage, and remove barriers that limited where people can live. Those reforms reflected years of planning, public engagement, and thoughtful discussion, and how Roanoke can grow while remaining a welcoming community. I recognize that some residents have concerns about neighborhood character, parking, and development. Those are important concerns, and I believe they should continue to be addressed through good planning, design standards, and responsible implementation, not by reversing the progress we already have made. The proposed revisions will reduce many of the housing opportunities created by the 2024 reforms at a time when housing affordability remains a challenge. I believe our focus should be on creating more choices for families, senior and young professionals, and those who want to call Roanoke home. I supported the 24 zoning amendment because I believe that they represent a forward-looking approach to meeting our housing needs while preserving the qualities that make Roanoke a great place to live. For those reasons, I cannot support the revisions, and I will not.
Right, I think we've heard from everybody but Councilman Nash. Would you like to weigh in?
I was letting everyone go. Letting everyone. But, the only thing that I would just add in is number one, I think it's important to acknowledge when common trends repeat themselves. And I think that a common trend we oftentimes hear is there's always a narrative painted that when a group is in opposition to something that I would say, quote unquote, the city is for, they always quantify the number of the voice of the group down to a small number of people. And they try to diminish that voice. They try to make the voice seem like it's not representative. And I've always had a problem with that and will continue to have a problem with that. Another important factor that I think that we have to acknowledge is when we're trying to compare what we're trying to do to what's been done in other states, not only do other states have different mechanisms in place to help stabilize rents and things of that nature, but they govern completely different than here in Virginia. I mean, we're talking about states that are home rule states or hybrid states, and most of the larger localities in those states have the ability to self-govern themselves. So they can completely act accordingly to quickly adapt and adjust and create whatever policies or legislation that it is that suits their needs at the time. In Virginia, we don't have that luxury. And I think it's important to note that in Arlington, where they have an increase in zoning density, they also have ADUs, and they're allowed to dictate how much affordable housing is required for certain developments. That is something we push for in our legislative package that, to the best of my knowledge, had not been directly asked or pushed for in prior years. In the legislative package to Richmond to add Roanoke to that list, we did something in the rezoning that is very pro-developer, very pro-developer. We went and said we want to do something that requires you to build affordable housing for people to have a place to live in our city. The Home Builder Association rioted against us to the point where now we get a dang on study, a study to see if we need housing, if we need affordable housing. That's crazy. So for me, it's another nail in the coffin for my position on this matter when we've done something as a locality that is very pro-developer. We're helping make things easier for them. We're helping them be able to build more density, be able to multiply their money. And we come along asking, hey, if you're going to build, let's say, 700 units, can you make, let's say, 15, 20% of them 60% AMI? And they came in and absolutely crushed what we were trying to do in Richmond. So that's an important fact to remember, is that greed is real. Until we have something where we can completely neutralize the greediness of some of these developers, we're never going to have truly affordable housing, because the only localities in Virginia, since we're a Dillon rule state, we have to look at our real peers, which are also in Dillon rule states in Virginia. The localities that are truly achieving affordable housing are either subsidizing a lot of it themselves and offering great incentives to help get that done, which we don't have the financial ability to do right now as a locality. So I say all that to say that those are some of the factors that I think we have to keep in mind, and we have to really focus on and remember that at the end of the day, there's very few companies and entities and people in Roanoke that really build housing. And so we need to be working towards getting the smaller folks to the table, getting the folks who really want to build housing because they have a love for building housing. They have a love for taking a derelict, horrible looking, boarded up building that's been sitting vacant in some of these neighborhoods, or some of the burnt down houses that have literally been burnt and you can completely see through it from the street, and they've been sitting there for a decade plus in some areas of our city. And someone says, you know what, I want to make that a place where someone can live, or let me tear that down and make that a duplex or a quadplex or whatever it is, instead of someone going and trying to buy someone's grandma's house because she's upside down on her taxes and she can't afford to catch up, or a developer with deep pockets come out and just write a big old check to someone and buy the property for them and then evict people, which happened, evict people and make them, by definition, homeless. So my position is, and this is the last thing I'll say, Mayor, I think that we knew as a council, we knew we had a divided council on this topic. I don't see why, with doing our due diligence, we wouldn't have sent out, and I don't know if it's legally possible, so this might be a good time to educate myself on this. But I don't see how come we didn't perhaps send out in the public notice and in with what we mailed out to people, what the citizens wanted directly, along with the compromise that we had produced, and let people know that these are the two options that we could, and kind of see what the public feedback is from that angle, instead of only still putting out one narrative or only putting out one option. That's my last 2 cents.
I'm going to follow up on his 2 cents. And I agree with you that we need more people that are able to build middle housing, more local developers. And I'm staring at those local developers in the back. And those local developers came here and told you that the zoning reform that we did in 2024 is allowing them to do that. I get that we don't want giant apartment buildings everywhere, just like I get we don't need single family housing everywhere. This zoning reform is focused on that missing middle housing that builds out our housing economy so that those developers sitting in the back who don't have huge deep pockets that do want to make units in this community can do that. And that's why I get so confused as to some of the votes on this dais. But that's for another day. But those developers are right here and they're telling you what they need, and they say they already have it.
All right, any other comments? All right, I would just concur. I've talked with a lot of small builders in our area, and the majority of them are supportive of the 2024 zoning amendments because it allows them to do the very thing that Councilman Nash was describing. So I'll offer that. And I want to remind us that, Roanoke's population has really not changed in the last 60 years. In fact, we're in a slight decline right now. We topped 100,000 a couple of years ago. Now we're back between 98, 99. But we're consistently there. If we're a city that really wants to grow, and what that level of growth looks like, I mean, I've heard one visionary say, we need 1 million people in this valley. Well, I think that's very visionary, and that's when we could talk about infrastructure. But I do think some growth, measured growth, is realistic within our city. And I agree with the vice mayor that having a strategy that's comprehensive is something we need. We've got a lot of the pieces of it, but we don't have it collectively. And I think that's really needs to be a focus of ours in the coming year as a council. But we also know that housing is a #1 priority. And how best to address that housing, we've talked about all the different facets of that tonight. We've got a lot of work to do in that regard. These zoning amendments are a small portion of that, but we need to make sure that we're not limiting what's possible by further reducing the density. And the last thing I'll say is all of this is meant to be incremental. It's not meant to happen all at one time. And collectively, I think one of the reasons that I could support this ordinance with this compromise, I still think it gets us the direction we're heading in a better way than the citizens' proposal. But I'll leave it there because we've been at this a while, and I appreciate all my colleagues for our work on this. So the ordinance that's before us is a compromise, and it's the one presented by a 7-0 vote from the Planning Commission and recommended by the planning staff. So I'm going to suggest that we move to vote on what's before us, and we'll see based on that outcome where we are after that. All right? Everyone clear what we're voting on? We're not voting on the citizens' proposal. This is on the information that was approved by the Planning Commission, their recommendation coming to us. That includes a compromise. All right? Madam Clerk.
To approve in a
Oh,
second.
do we need a motion to?
Yes.
A motion to vote or,
It needs to be either positive or negative, so.
right.
we need
I
a
thought that was
motion.
before us, but since we've broken it apart, do we need a separate motion to adopt the ordinance?
Right,
before
the
us?
first vote was just to separate them out.
Okay.
We have not had a motion either way on these 3 sections.
So we did move originally on this ordinance.
To remove it from
No, when we started the
this
night,
giant
when we
thing.
started the night, we moved
The
the
entire
entire
ordinance.
ordinance.
Yes, but
Then we
we've
took out
amended it
parts of
many
it. So what's
times.
left before us is what's left in this ordinance, which is related to density.
Right,
Correct?
so I think since the order that we did it,
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
removed the density
Okay,
and then we
sorry.
voted on what was left.
Now,
That was
I
approved.
gotcha.
So
Sorry.
density is kind of sitting out here.
My apologies.
No worries.
All right, we did vote to remove the residential piece, so we're voting on that, and that's what's before us here. Okay.
A
And that is sections
motion-
205, 312, and 409-1.
Someone needs to make a motion, negative or positive, and then we'll vote. To you.
Well, I'll get things started. I move that we adopt the recommended ordinance language related to residential density in sections 205, 312, and 409-1. Do I have a second? Second. All right. Do I have another motion?
I move for a resolution to initiate amendments to the city zoning ordinance and referring consideration of such zoning amendments to the planning commission for review and recommendation. Do I need to read the entire thing or?
No.
Okay, cool.
But we
Thank
need
you.
to make sure that it's only including the things that we would be referring.
Well, it would be including the
Wait, is this the
initiating resolution.
where we have we're on a different, don't we have to make a decision
It
before we can
died,
do that?
didn't it?
Correct, there was no second, so it failed.
Okay. all
There's
right.
nothing on the floor. Mr. Hagan was in process of making a motion.
Yeah, so this, I'm looking for the actual language of this.
Paragraph 1 on page 3 kind of talks about the 4
Yeah.
categories.
So, city council finds it appropriate to refer such proposed amendments to planning commission for review, public hearing, and recommendation, and to provide additional opportunities for public input prior to the final council consideration. The city council takes the actions described below, which will be finds that public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practices requires consideration of the proposed zoning amendments related to residential district density requirements, data center supplemental regulations, changes necessitated by amendments to the Code of Virginia effective July 1, 2026, and such other changes as may be proposed by planning staff. Do I need to keep going? Oh, I do? Okay. That the
No,
proposed.
sorry, you do not, sorry.
Huh? Am I
You
good?
do
or-
not, you're
Oh, okay,
good.
cool.
So he has made a motion to adopt the initiating resolution that I drafted, and you all have copies of.
Second.
This one?
Yes.
All right, there's been a second. Any discussion on this?
Someone like to explain what the motion is?
Yeah.
So that the public understands what you're trying to do, which is to send this back to the
Bas-
planning commission,
Basically,
back for another year.
Councilman,
Let him finish.
basically what this would do is that this would just send the citizens proposal, some stuff about data centers, and compliance with Virginia code that were just passed and made into law back to the planning commission, and we would end up voting on this at some time in the future. That's basically what this does.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion.
What's your amendment? for
My amendment
consideration?
would be to do all of that except for the citizen proposal. So send back do the stuff that we want to do with the data centers, continue forward with the things that need to be fixed with Virginia code. But I don't think it's appropriate to send this issue that has been decided twice, been decided a third time now by the Planning Commission with no decision from us, to then send our resources to go do it again. So that's where my amendment is coming from.
All right, before we can, is there a second to that motion to amend?
Second.
All right. So this initiating resolution says nothing about a citizen's proposal. It says nothing about that. So I just want to be clear that what we're voting on does not mean that we are sending that, we're sending the whole thing back to them, but it does not say specifically that we're sending the citizens' proposal back to them. I just want to be clear on that.
I will happily amend that to.
We have an amended motion before us.
Okay.
That we need to have discussion on. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend, to take out the, say it again,
Take out the, so this would be,
take out the residential density, basically?
Yes.
The residential density, district density requirements, okay? All right, I'm not seeing any other discussion, so let's vote on the motion to amend, to remove racial, God, sorry.
To do what
Tried
now?
to do in the
remove-
24 amendments. Residential district density requirements from the initiating resolution. All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Powers,
No.
Mr. Hagan,
No.
Ms. Sanchez Jones,
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire,
No.
Mr. Knapp, Collison,
aye.
Mayor Cobb.
Aye. And the motion to amend fails.
Now I would like to offer an amendment to incorporate the citizens' proposal into that initiated resolution.
Right, can you, all right, I think I understand the intent of that. Your second to that.
Second.
All right, we're open for discussion.
I think,
Okay, go ahead and speak to it.
sorry. I think that's very important that we continue to listen to the community, and, that's the easiest way that we have. So thank you.
All right, Ms. Sanchez Jones?
We have also listened to the community in keeping with the 24 amendments. So just one side of the community. So we also have listened.
Listen to the overwhelming support from the community. Even this evening, there are more people in favor for this, to keep the zoning reforms. Every time this has come in, there's always been more people in for keeping and creating these zoning reforms than there have been opposed, every single time. So let's be clear, this is not a community compromise, as you guys like to call it. That's nice marketing, but that's not what it is.
All right, other discussion? I will just say I'll be voting against this. I think it's very short-sighted. I think it's listening to a small group of people in our community, not the whole group. And I take a lot of, it's important to me to listen to voices that I'm not hearing. And in conversations I'm having, broad-based conversations in the community, there is clear support for these zoning amendments. So I'm concerned that our council is leaning in on a small group of citizens who do have important interests in our community, but I don't believe reflect the whole. And I'm also concerned about the time that's going to be required to consider this. And I support Ms. Turner in, if this goes back, that this may take some time because we have some other things we need to focus on right now in planning. So I support the time that it will need to take, but I'm disappointed and need to express that. So we have a vote before us to amend this to include sending the citizens proposal along with this initiating resolution back to the manager and the planning department and the planning commission for consideration. Right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Powers. Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Triple no.
Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Collison.
No.
And Cobb.
No. And there being no further business to come before.
Mayor, sorry.
What?
That was the motion to amend.
Yes.
Now we have to adopt the resolution as amended.
All right. Then, Madam Clerk, this is a vote to adopt the resolution as amended.
Mayor, that point of order, there has to be a motion and second. So I
All right,
move.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please. Mr. Hagan and Mr. Nash. We're just going to move to the vote.
Powers. Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
No.
Mr. McGuire, Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Collison.
No.
And Mayor.
No. And the motion is adopted, and it is referred, the initiating resolution is adopted. All right, I don't believe there's any other business to come before council tonight, and so we are adjourned.